So in this next step, we're going to create a box which will pop up when the cards have been tested. We can press a button to replay all of the incorrect cards immediately, so we can retest those. Sort of like if we had a pile of paper flashcards, we could just pick those up and flick through those again. And the pop-up box will also have the stats of how many cards were correct and incorrect. So let's get that underway. So the first step is we'll go to Flashcards Notifier, and we need to track how many cards were answered incorrectly. So we'll do that with a variable, a list of type word. We'll name this incorrect cards, and we'll initialize this as an empty list. Then we need to create a method to add to this list every time a card was answered incorrectly. We'll create a method here, update card outcome. We need a couple of required arguments. The first one is the actual word that we want to update, and the second argument of type bool is whether the word was correct. Okay, so therefore we can write if is correct is false, in that instance, incorrect cards will have that word added to it. So the word that we pass in, and we'll call notify listeners. All right, cool. So we've got a method that will update incorrect cards. So we need to call this method. We can do that here, run swipe card 2. This is where we get the information about the card, whether it's been swiped left or right. So we can update this. We need the word and also whether it's correct. Now we can just write in here the direction. So we're getting this passed in to this method here. So we'll pass it into this method as well. So direction, is that equal to slide direction dot right away. So this is saying if we swiped it right, this will evaluate to true. Otherwise it will evaluate to false. But actually, and a little bit confusingly, we need to change this to left away. And that is because we flipped this card around or transformed it 180 degrees. So the card's left is actually our right and vice versa. So we just flip this around and it'll pass in the value that we want. So therefore we pass in whether the card is correct or incorrect. And we also need to pass in the word of that card. And we could just pass in here. We can pass in word 1 or word 2. I don't think it will matter. So we'll just pass in word 2 here. Okay, so now that we're updating this, we can test it. So update card outcome. Let's run a print function to test it. So incorrect cards for each. So for each element in our list, for each item, we'll print out the English. So for each word that we've added to our list of words, let's see how that looks. We'll do a hot restart. Cool, so sunscreen has been added to that list. That's printed out. And swimsuit has been added to that list. Cool, so therefore, this print function is confirming that this is working well, so we can move on. So now let's create a results box, a pop-up box, which appears using the AlertDialog widget. So in Flashcards page, we'll create a new Dart file. We'll name this results box, create a new stateless widget. And here we'll return an AlertDialog. So we'll use title, text, and for the title, we'll type in round completed. We'll also use the actions property, which takes in a list of widgets. So we'll create some buttons using the elevated button widget. And again, we use a text as the child. Retest incorrect cards. All right, so we've now created the basic outline of a results box using the AlertDialog widget. Jumping back to Flashcards Notifier, we now want to track two bits of information. The first bit is this the first round that the cards are running, or is it a subsequent round? So we need to know that because we'll be pressing a button to generate all of the incorrect cards for subsequent rounds. So we'll create a new bool and we'll name this is first round. Set that to true. And the second bool we need to track is whether the pop-up box has appeared or we are actually flicking through the cards. So is round completed. And we'll set that to false by default. All right, cool. So coming down to generate current word. In this method, we request a new word. So here we have an if statement. If selected words is not empty, we'll run this code. Otherwise, the words are all completed. So therefore, at this point in time, we should have the alert dialog pop up. So we can do that by using a helper method, show dialog. And here we can use the builder to return that pop-up box. So context and results box. And show dialog here also requires an instance of a build context. So we don't have one, so we can have one passed into generate current word. Okay, pass that in, and now we have some error messages, so we need to add this. So card 2, context. So here we do have an instance of a build context. So pass that in, and also flashcards page. All right, cool. Let's go back again to Flashcards Notifier. Now also, I want there to be a slight buffer before we run this method, just so it's not too jarring, so the pop-up box appears just after a quick moment. So we'll write future.delayed, put in a duration, let's say 500 milliseconds. And then after that duration, when this future runs, so inside this function, we'll paste in show dialog. So we run it at this point in time. So let's see how that looks. We'll do a hot restart. Okay, cool. So we have the alert dialog popping up. All the cards have been completed. Now we do have one issue, and the card still animates in, even though we've completed all of the cards. So we can fix that. So at this point in time, we can update those variables we created. So is round completed, we'll set that to true. And also is first round, at this point in time, we know that is false. So we at least have cycled through one round of cards at this point in time. So we can use this information, is round completed, in card 1. So if we go to card 1, and we have our slide animation, so we animate when slide 1 is true, but we can also write and notifier dot is round completed is false. Otherwise, we don't want this to run. So therefore, we pass in a value of true. Both of these have to be true. Okay, so jumping back, when we press this button, we want to replay all of the incorrect cards. So here in this method, we've got generate all selected words. So we can write if is first round and I'll clear selected words up here. So here, when it is the first round, all of our words will be set to all of the topic words. However, when it's not the first round, our selected words will be set to the incorrect cards list. So write to list on the end here. So at this point in time, if it is not the first round, we want this list to be populated with all of the incorrect cards. And after we've done that, we should clear incorrect cards. So that list goes back to an empty list because we'll then populate it again with the next round. Additionally, is round completed is false at this point in time because we're now cycling through a new round. So now we need to update this button. So when we press it, we want to then call this method again so we can run through the cards. Let's go back to our results box. And here what we can do is use Navigator to restart this page. So we can write Navigator, push replacement. So we're just pushing this route back on. And here we can use the builder. And we'll push back on Flashcards page. So this is basically just a way to refresh the page. Now let's test this. We'll do a hot restart. And cool. So we don't have another card animating up, and we now have a button. Let's retest incorrect cards. And the flamingo was the card that was answered incorrectly last time. So now we know that. Retest incorrect cards. So at this point in time, we want to update it. So this is the end of the session. So we'll go back to Flashcards Notifier. And then down here where we generate a new word. And then in here we can test whether the session has been completed by checking if the incorrect cards is empty. So if we have no incorrect cards, therefore we must have completed all of the cards and the session must be completed. So let's create one more bool to track that. Is session completed? So at that point in time, all of the cards have been answered correctly. And here we can write, is session completed? True. All right, cool. And we'll put in a print function just to check that. The other thing that we need to be mindful of is when we exit the app, we need to reset these variables. So we'll create a method here. And we'll name this reset, and we'll just copy in these values here. So we need to reset these back to the default value. So therefore, when we exit the session and go back in, these values have been reset. So go to the custom app bar, and we can then write notifier, because we already have consumer set up, and we'll set reset. So now let's test this and see how it looks. Hot restart, select birds. So we should have just Kiwi coming up. All right, Kiwi, and now we know that. Flick it away, and cool, session completed, true. All right, so we know now that the session is completed. Let's exit the app, jump back in, and now the app starts over fresh. Cool, so we can keep cycling through and we can exit at any time, jump back in, and the app will be reset. Let's now update the alert dialog. So first of all, round completed should be changed to session completed when all of the cards have been completed. So therefore, let's jump into the results box and let's wrap in a consumer so we can access Flashcards Notifier. All right, so we have the consumer set up. And now we have our title. So let's set this by using is session completed. So if session is completed, we obviously don't want to return that text. We'll return some other text, session completed. Now let's update the theme a little bit more. So we can do that by jumping into configs, themes, and here we can use Dialog Theme. Dialog Themes are really cool, a theme for pretty much everything. Let's add some shape, rounded rectangle border. We have the border radius dot circular. And we'll pass in the circular border radius constant we created earlier to keep everything consistent. Let's also update the background color. Set that to red. We'll update the title text style. Put in the font family here. Font size. Put in 20. And we'll make the color white because we've set the background as red. And let's also update the elevated button. So here we have elevated button theme. We'll use elevated button theme data class. To stylize the elevated button, use the style property, then elevated button.style from the static method. And then in here, we'll set the shape, rounded rectangle border, the border radius, and again, border radius. And we're using the same constant we have up here. So therefore, we can just have the same consistent value throughout the app. So really cool. And we'll also create a little bit of border. So we'll use the side property, border side, and we'll set the color as white. We'll set the primary color as yellow for the button, so it contrasts with the red, and we're keeping the same colors. And lastly, for the text style, font family, let's just copy in the same font family. So we're using Noto Sans from Google Fonts. And a size of 15. So here we've set an app-wide theme for the elevated button and alert dialog. Let's test that. So we need to do a hot restart to have that theme update. Okay, cool. So we have the alert dialog popping up and the theme is much better. Let's fix the alignment up a little bit. So first of all, the title. Now up here, I've written this quite clunkily. So we can write this more efficiently by instead removing this here and instead in here writing notifier dot is session completed. Okay, so this is a much more efficient way to write it. And let's first align the text. Text align dot center. Hot reload. Okay, so we have the title centered. And for the actions, I want to create another button, but I want these buttons to be stacked on top of each other. At the moment, they'll be stacked side by side. So inside of actions, I'm going to return a column. So we have a list of children. We'll cut this button here, paste it in, and let's create another button. So we'll copy this, paste another button here. So now we have two buttons, and let's get the alignment right first. So in here, cross-axis alignment, and we'll use cross-axis alignment stretch. So for the second button, let's update that so it takes us back to the home page. And therefore we need to update this code. And we'll just copy this page here, which is the code when we press the X button up the top. Copy that. Paste that in there. And lastly, if we've completed all of the cards correctly, we do not want retest incorrect cards to pop up. So we don't want that to show because there'll be no cards to test. So therefore, we can just do a check. We'll write notifier.isSession completed. If it is, we'll return a size box, so essentially nothing. Otherwise, we'll return that button. And I'm just going to put some commas here to make this format Not so ugly, so it's a bit cleaner. Okay, so that's a lot better, a lot more readable. Let's see how that looks. We'll do a hot restart. Select birds. Kiwi. Flick that away, don't know that one. Duck. Yards, know that one. So now we should just have Kiwi. So round completed, retest incorrect cards. And Kiwi's popped up. Now let's flick that away, session completed. So now we can go home. And we appear back home. Now let's pop into another category. And cool, we have another category. Retest incorrect cards. And we can keep testing that until we get it correct. And session completed, home. Okay, cool. So we now have a button to retest the incorrect flashcards. That's working really smoothly. And also to exit the app and replay another pack of cards. Next up, we'll update that results box to show some basic stats about how many cards were answered correctly and also to show a percentage.